What's up, guys? So in this video we're going to do another update on the D150, where it's at, what we've done so far, and we are getting close. I would say it's going to be the first fire up be in the next week or two. We're getting pretty dang close. We do still got to do the fuel system. That is something that we haven't done yet, and I'm doing something a little bit different than I originally planned. So now we're going to be doing 8 AN fuel line instead of a 6 AN fuel line. I decided to do that because I'm probably going to run E85 on it, and I'd rather just do the fuel system once and be done with it. So that's the route we're going. I got that in order. Actually, the fuel line showed up today, but I'm waiting on some fittings. They're supposed to be here tomorrow. But hopefully next week we can get the fuel cell put in there and get all that lined out. There's a few other little things we got to do. One of them being, this has a little stem coming off of it that goes to your heater core that would normally be there, which mine obviously doesn't have one. And I had like a little stem pipe that came in my intake up here. Basically the hose went in there to the heater core, back to the stem pipe that stuck out of the intake over here, but I got a sensor there instead, and I don't have a heater core, so I'm not going to be using heat. So I'm just going to plug that hole off, and that'll be that. Something else I want to mention though, I did redo my battery relocation kit deal I had going on. Instead of being on the starter post like it was down here, I didn't like that. I don't like having all that stuff sticking off my post. I did put this in, which is a power distribution block. As you can see, I got my main power wire coming in right here, and then that black wire there is going straight down to the starter. You can see that it's in there. And then this here is going inside the truck to another little fuse block. It's just for all my gauges and stuff like that they got to have a constant power. Some of them do, so that's what that's for. Just small things. And here you can see, I'm sorry, this is the one with the fuse on it. It's the one that's going inside the truck that powers all my small things. This one here is actually for the Holley box. I'll probably end up moving this because Holley's very adamant about putting them directly on the battery, so we might run it through a relay or something and run it to the battery, because that wire is 14 gauge and I don't really want to run it like the truck. So we'll probably put a relay on it or something. But we will have to figure something else out whenever we get to that point, because like I mentioned before, I got to have this truck where it'll shut off when you flip the switch back there. For right now it'll work, but I'm gonna have to figure out some way of cutting the ignition on the box whenever we flip that switch, because right now the way it's set up, it should work. Basically what I got going on with it right now is I got this field wire here. It's a power wire, as you can see, and it comes back here and it's spliced here, this red wire going into the cab, and it goes to a switch. Let me show you that real quick. Goes this switch. I got a light on it so that way whenever it's powered I'll know, but it goes this switch, and what it does whenever I flip that switch, it's gonna quit sending the power to the positive field on the alternator, so therefore my alternator won't work, and whenever they go to flip the switch on the back, the truck will shut off because there's no power getting to anything. But that's going to be a problem with the Holley box if I got it hooked directly to the battery back there. It may work because it may cut ignition. I'm not real sure. We'll have to try it first and see what happens, but I don't know. We'll just have to cross that bridge when we get there. But something else I've done, as you can see here, we do got coil packs on the truck for the LS coils. We basically made this little bracket. You can see what my dad did. It already had these studs sticking off of the valve cover, so we just used that stud and put a nut in it and kind of made a little bracket to hold the coil packs away from the headers and all that. And we needed to kind of be high, that way the spark plug wires are kind of long so we don't hit the headers and stuff like that. But they should work good. I do actually still have to pin my coil near plug harness it's for Holley. I got to pin it into the ECU and then come out here and it's got a connector that's already terminated, and it'll hook right into this. I'll probably move this like I got this one over here. That way it'll be kind of away from the headers and all that. And I don't really like that setup. I don't want wires coming over the top. I'd rather them be on the valve cover like this. It just looks a little bit better. But it's kind of hard to hide all these wires. But anyway, so that's kind of the deal that's going on there with the coil packs. I still got to plug them in. But as far as everything else should work. It's all connected. I already did all the pins and everything, repin stuff. Like this, for example, this is a factory throttle position sensor. I just repinned it from what Holley had, and everything should work fine. Also, just a quick little note in case anybody else is doing something similar to this. I have a Haynes repair manual. I think it's a Haynes. Let me go look real quick. But this actually came in handy for this. Let me see. Yeah, it's a Haynes repair manual, but it was for a 74 through 93 D150 or Dodge pickups. But it does actually have some Magnum stuff in it because the early Magnums were in the 93 models. So that's how I was able to pin some of those connectors. Some of them they were just like the book said, the right color and all that, you know, so it was easy to pin. I will also mention though, something that's a little bit different is this Holley EFI distributor thing. It's acting as a cam and crank sensor. That's what that's for. So that way you can run the coils like I'm running here. It has two different sensors in it, and I like that because it allows me to get away from the transmission having to be notched. Because if you're familiar with the factory Magnum stuff, they actually have a crank sensor that sits in a slot on the transmission bell housing. I can show you real quick actually. Right here, and then my little grommet popped out. But there's a slot right here, as you can see, and there's a sensor that sits right inside of that. And basically, the reluctor wheel has little notches cut in it, and it just picks up when it passes, so it kind of knows where the crank's at. And then the distributor on the factory Magnums is acting like the cam sensor. But essentially, the dual sync distributor is putting both of them into the distributor. So it makes it a lot easier for me on having to notch that out and do all that. Plus, I get to use the coils instead, which is a good thing. So, and it's cheaper that way because you got to buy a bunch of drivers and all kinds of stuff you want to do the way with the nipples on the tip of the cap. You can see over here, actually, I'll show you. These got little nipples sticking off. And if you put the little block cap thing off like I did, you gotta take this off. I didn't know that at first, but you figure it out pretty quick when the cap don't go on. This is kind of the little pointer if you were using this. Mine doesn't have that anymore. Now it's just a little black thing. It's just sit on top of it. But all the other stuff is still intact on there, just in case anybody runs into that. But, so we should be all good and set up here. I still got to sync that distributor though, and I will mention as well, whenever you do this distributor deal, you have to set your your harmonic balancer at 50 degrees before top dead center. As you can see here, I got mine. I already wrote on it before, but you can see where mine's at should be close to 50. It doesn't have to be exact, but they have a little, on their paper they send you, it tells you however big your harmonic balancer is. There's a calculation you can do, and you can figure out how far to go past the at TDC to get your 50 before top dead center. Mine, I think mine was like 7 1/4. So if you got a Magnum, it'll be about 7 1/4 on your harmonic balancer, and then I think it was like 3 1/4 inches or 3 1/2 inches, something like that, or 3 1/16, I believe is what it was. But anyway, that's how far you got to go with that, and then you just basically make sure when you still got the pointer on your distributor, like I showed you there, that it's pointing at number 1 cylinder, which will be right here. So as long as it's pointing in line with your number 1 spark plug, then you should be good enough, and then the Holley can kind of adjust it from there. Basically what I'll do is I'll turn the ignition on, and then rotate my housing back and forth. It'll tell me if you go one way, the cam sensor will pop up as a red light, and then like a little LED that'll light up, and then you go the other way and it'll light up for the crank sensor, and then it should be synced. So that's that deal. Something else though is my Holley EFI, that HP box I mentioned before. I believe that I got it from a guy on Facebook, and he told me whenever I bought it that it was outdated. He said he got it a long time ago. So I was kind of expecting it to be pretty low on the version level, and it was at a version 2. I believe it was 5.9 or something like that. So it had never been updated before. And I ran into a bit of a problem with that, because if you go on Holley's website, they offer all the versions that you can get to upgrade your ECU to whatever you want, whatever version you want. But my problem was they didn't go low enough on the scale, because mine was like a mid-grade version 2, like the one where they do like half updates. It's like V204, and then what I needed though was a V2089 or something like that. And the problem I ran into was the software that I downloaded from Holley would not work with the firmware that was on the Holley ECU, because the Holley ECU was outdated too much to where if I went on the earliest one they offer from Holley, it still was too high on the version scale. So luckily there was a guy on Facebook, I messaged in a group chat. I was asking about how to fix this issue, and then somebody, luckily, they actually had a mid-grade version 2 and they sent it to me. So I used that. He was talking about how he figured they would probably discontinue it at some point, so he went ahead and got them, which I'm very thankful he did, because that saved me from having to send it to Holley or something. But anyway, he said that to me, and I got it hooked up, and it was able to communicate between the software on my computer and the firmware and the ECU, and that way I could actually start to update it, and that's what I ended up doing. So now it's on a version 4. It's having a little bit of a problem going to version 5. It keeps saying corrupted file or something like that. But that'll be fine for now. For what we're doing, version 4 will work all right. We don't really need version 5 or version 6 at the moment. We should be perfectly fine with version 4. But if we ever do need it, we'll get into that rabbit hole and try to figure out what's going on with the corrupted file deal. I'm not real sure what it is, but it could just be something at the moment on Holley's end, or something, I don't know. It may be one of those problems that just fixes itself if you wait. So anyway, we'll get to that whenever we need to, but I just wanted to mention that in case anybody else ran into that problem. You will definitely need to have a mid-grade version 2 if you have one of these that are like from 2004, whatever this box was from. But and it's never been updated. But yeah, I wanted to talk about this too and see what y'all's thoughts were going to be on this. So I got all these gauges in my dash here. I did actually fix them a little bit. They're all coming out of connectors now, so it's not a big cluster back there. Now it's actually coming out of little connectors, which is a lot better. But anyway, what I was going to say is I have a fuel pressure gauge and I have 2 wideband gauges. So what I'm thinking about doing, as you can see here, I got 2 spots for 2 gauges. That's actually my transmission and coolant temp. But I was thinking about moving these 2 gauges over here and getting rid of my fuel pressure, and also getting rid of the other wideband gauge. And the reason I want to do that is because the Holley box can monitor one of my O2 sensors, and it can also monitor the fuel pressure. So what I thought about doing was this little square piece right here, cutting that out and putting one of those Holley screens in there. That way I can tune something if I'm on the road or something. I don't have my laptop with me, but that would allow me to eliminate those 2 gauges and actually fit that in there. And it'd just be nice to have that where I can mess with it on the fly if I need to. And I shouldn't need 2 wideband sensors. As long as I got one of them, it can read my right side bank, and then the Holley box can read the left side bank. That way I can just compare them if I'm worried about it or something. In case I'm suspicious of one of them being super rich and one of them being super lean, I can just check it and see how close they are. That's one deal that is a little bit tricky with the dual plane intakes whenever you're boosting them. Is the reason a lot of people don't use them is because there can be a discrepancy between one bank and the other bank, or a couple cylinders on this side and a couple cylinders on that side, because it's a dual plane. The plenum area is a little bit different, so it'd be nice to be able to see both sides. That way I can make sure, like I said, one of them's not super rich, one of them's not super lean, and keep everything happy. That's another good thing about the EFI system, is I can actually go in and add a little bit of fuel to each individual injector. That way I can keep everything pretty close. I mean, I'm not going to put a wideband in every single exhaust port. That's a little excessive, but it'd be a lot of wires. But you get what I'm saying, though. It gives me more control over what I'm able to do. And the fuel pressure, I can just have that as well on the gauge, so that way, or I mean the screen, that way I can see what's going on there, and that way I can have it all good without and still have the same thing, if that makes sense. So I can still have the same readings coming at me, but also be able to tune it. That's what the end goal is. I'd like to be able to tune it on the fly without, if in case I don't have my laptop or something happens. Yeah. But anyway, so that's my plan with that. If y'all think it's a terrible idea, let me know. If you think it's a great idea, let me know. But anyway, so that's what we got going on with it right now. I do still got to tidy up some wires up here. As you can see, they're kind of still a lot of action going on, but I do got the box mounted over here, as you can see, and that's all I got for now, really. I was also gonna mention, though, I do have to put the throttle linkage on this truck. As you can see, mine ain't gonna reach because it's a lot shorter. Like on the Holley 4-barrel was on this side, and on the Magnum factory throttle bodies, they come over this way and pull this way. But so that I'm gonna have to get, my buddy's got a parts truck. I'll probably grab the pedal too, just in case it's got like a stroke issue or something, and I'll just use the one that came off the 2nd gen Rams. That should work great because it's the same thing. So hopefully that all works out. And another thing I also want to mention, I will have to put this on there, which is, it's a cable for the pressure on the transmission. It basically pulls it as you increase throttle. That's how these kind of operate. But that should work on my other transmission. I was looking at it and they look about the same, so I think we can make something work off of that. And that way I don't have to worry about my pressure being wrong, because this one had I actually blew one of my transmissions up because of that. Whenever I first put one together, I didn't hook that up right, and it destroyed the transmission. But another thing, this one had a rod originally, and it was on this side. I don't know if anybody else is familiar with that kind of setup, but it was just basically a rod that went back and forth. And I'm just going to use that cable and loop it around the same way they had it from the factory, and that should be fine. I may have to adjust it or something, make it sweep right and all that, but we should be good. I got all my other sensors, they're all good to go. Only thing really we're waiting on now is to get the fuel system going. And like I said, I gotta wire up the wires for my coil packs, which I got the kit to do that. I'll probably get started on that pretty soon. And I gotta set the sync on the distributor. I might make a quick little video on that in case anybody in the future needs to know how to do that or whatever, or they, just to kind of know what we're dealing with when it comes to that. It seems pretty simple from what I've read, so I need to do it anyway, so I might as well record it while I do it. But yeah, and then next week too, I'm gonna set up a bass tune for this truck on the Holley EFI. So if anybody's wondering, in the future, if they're running the Holley system or something and they want to know what to do or how to do that, I'm going to do it on mine, and we'll see how that goes. And if it goes well, then you can just copy mine, basically. I'll just take a video of everything I did. If anybody's interested in that, I can do that for sure. But I think that'll be it for now. But y'all stay tuned. We're getting pretty close now. And make sure to like and subscribe. And we'll catch you next week.